Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining this morning. My name is Jalendra Rizal. So as Camille mentioned that I work out of the UC Corporate Extension Office in Modesto for Stanislaus County, cover northern San Joaquin Valley. Most of my program is focused, I am an integrated pest management entomology advisor. So I focus on entomological issue in tree crops, mostly focusing on tree crops, but also do some work on vegetables and other crops also. So today I'm gonna cover certain pests within the tree system because I wanted to cover as much as I can, but at the same time, because of the time limitation, I thought I'll provide a little bit more in-depth knowledge about some of the important ones based on my experience and work done in this area. So, okay. First of all, I want to kind of give you a little bit of background about what is IPM. I know that some of you already, most of you already probably know, but it helps to set the stage, I guess. So IPM is actually it's a approach. It's a science-based approach that combines a variety of techniques to manage the pest. So that include cultural, behavioral, biological, and different type of control methods, including chemical control. And so the whole idea of IPM is to understand the pest, its life cycle, how pests interact with the environment, and based on that, the IPM professional can manage the pest with the most current information, right? And to improve manage your pest at the same time, lowering the cost and reduce the risk to the people and to the environment. So that's the holistic approach of the IPM essentially. So what it means for the practitioner, right? So it means that you first need to understand what you're going to manage. So your pest, its biology, life cycle, how it behave, what's the timing, phenology, those kind of things are very important. Monitoring for the insects. So not every level of the pest or infestation is required necessary to treat or manage. So in that case, it's a monitoring tools we have for different pests and also natural enemies that can help you to determine when to take the necessary action. If you need to take the necessary action, so sometimes there are thresholds, other times you also go with the information that you generated through your monitoring and then decide the control measures. And then, of course, you use the different control method in an integrated way. First, provide the emphasis more to the preventative control and then also the suppressive control, including insecticide use. So the goal is to really, if you're doing all of this, then you should be able to reduce some pesticide use. It also definitely helps in the environment and to the human health because you have less pesticide going into the environment. And also, bottom line is it has to be economically viable, right? So economic savings should be a part of that. When you talk about multiple control methods, this is a pyramid. You can see you want to use as much as you can for cultural practices or variety selection that has less susceptibility to the insect and pest and disease. You want to use mechanical, physical control as much as possible, or based on your skill and production system and other biological control tools, and ultimately, as a last resort, use the chemical insecticide. So that's how the IPM approach works in general, right? So it's kind of the approach that making decision based on your information that you derive from your orchard, basically, or your field. Okay, so if you talked about the major tree pest, there are a lot more than this. So this is just the naming some. So there are a whole groups of the stink bug, which I'll talk a little bit more detail. There are the mite pest that mostly attacks on the leaves. These are the indirect pest because the leaf is not the edible part of the majority of the tree fruits. Also, there are multiple leaf roller species, peach twig borer, oriental fruit moth, especially for the peaches. There are important one, or they can attack also twig as well as the fruit. There are some wood boring insect like flat-headed borer, limb borer, plum borer. These are some of the one that attacks the twigs and then the branches of the insect of the plant. And then there are some scale insect, multiple species, whether it's a soft scale that produced a lot of honeydew or the hard scale that do not produce the honeydew, but mostly these skill insect attack on the branches in general. But there are some that goes after fruit also if the population is high level. And as I mentioned, the mites and thrips and these kind of things, right? So there are a whole different range of the insect that can attack the tree fruits. For today purpose, I kind of divided it, provide the main ones here. So based on the crop, the major crops in the area, and then the stink bug is definitely one of the important ones for majority of all the crops except walnut. Spotted wing Drosophila is another important one. It's an invasive species, but it's established, well established, and can cause damage to a lot of berry crops as well as the cherry. For to those of us who have cherry orchard, that's the very prominent destructive pest for that also. The third one is codling moth, which is more important for walnut, apple, walnut, pear orchards. And the last one is spotted lanternfly, which is not established pest in California yet, but it has been established in the East Coast, and this is one of the threat that we have in California that if it's introduced or when it's introduced, then it can be a pretty significant serious issue because especially with the grapes, but also it can attack on other hardwood trees like apple and other trees. So we don't know the how much extent damage they will do in a lot of these things, but at least it's important to keep that in mind. So I know that last year in my webinar, and I hope that some of you attended that last year. So I covered the spotted wing Drosophila and spotted lanternfly. So today I'm going to focus more on the stink bugs and codling moth in my presentation. Okay, so moving on to stink bugs, they are very common. They're widely found in orchard system pretty much throughout the world, I would say, and definitely in California. So there are multiple different species of stink bug. The name come from the kind of like a stinky scent they produce when they're disturbed, and that's what we call the stink bugs. But there are, if you look at all the body shape of this insect, they are more like a shield shaped insect. There are some are a little smaller, others are a little bigger, but they are more or less look similar, right? There are color variation and things, and there are multiple species, as I said. There are conspur, very common, red soldier, different say and Euler stink bug, that's kind of greenish type you can see in the picture. The green stink bug is very prominent. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then the brown marmoset stink bug. Marmoset is stink bug, which is an invasive pest and is present in the certain area in your in the coast. So if you want to learn more about these different species of stink bug, the UC IPM statewide IPM program has these guidelines, the ID guide that we recently updated. It has a different types of stink bug species there, identifying characteristic. There are nymphal stages, you know, what kind of eggs, what type of the eggs and the other different stages that you will be able to use it to identifying all of that. So one thing I want to mention is that a lot of these stink bugs, especially the conspur stink bug, brown marmorated, their color, and there is a native stink bug called the rough stink bug, as you see in here. They look similar, and sometimes the people, most of the time, this is the one that confusing. The ID wise, it's confusing with the brown marmorated stink bug. So I'll say that if you can look at this identification guide, just to Google ID of most common species in tree crops, should be able to get the information and get a little bit more detail onto how to differentiate that. Okay, so all these stink bugs, they have one common theme in terms of what what we care about, right? Which is their feeding behavior, feeding nature. All have this something called the piercing sucking mouth part. It's a very fancy name, right? It's not, right? So they pierce and suck the juice. That's how their name come from. And you can see that all different insect, they have this straw-like mouth part where they insert into the fruit or the edible parts of the in most cases in edible parts of the fruit. and basically release some type of digestive enzyme, salivary enzyme, and then that helps them to liquefy the content and then draw that content back to. So in that case, when they feed on, they create all kinds of different symptom on the fruit because they are sucking the juice from younger to mid stage of the fruit. All of these insects that had the kind of more or less feeding behavior is the same. So piercing, sucking, mouthpart. So the green stink bug, one of the prominent one, and it's probably the biggest stink bug species out there we have in the cropping system. So it's about 3/4 of inch of size. It has these yellow bands on the side as a margin. You can see on the margin. You can see. And their number has been going up in the last several years, and we don't know why, but I'll talk a little bit more about this insect. So this insect, green stink bug, really, it's the only stink bug species we basically overwinter in the orchard. Majority of the other stink bug species, they go somewhere else after the season for overwintering. They need a little bit more warmer condition, and then they go, leave the orchard. But the green stink bug species is known to overwinter inside the orchard. And you can see this is also common pest in almonds also. And so some cases you can see just the green sting right there on the spur in almond orchard in January. So you can think about it. It's pretty cold out there at that time. So they feed on the fruit and cause these all kinds of deformation. Also, when you cut the fruit and you can see those dark color, brown color, necrotic tissue inside. So these fruits are not they're not unmarketable, right? So if you eat those fruits, it should be all right because if it's not already soggy and things, but in terms of the market. Nobody wants to buy the fruit that doesn't look like, the solid fruit, right? Um, and so these are different stages. Again, I think the adult is the one that majority of all of these stink bug, I would say the adult is the one that causing the most damage in fruits. So as I mentioned that we've seen the increase infestation of green stink bug. This is a picture from almonds, but the same thing in the peach age too. We do have a lot of peach acre in Modesto area too. So we have a growing problem of green stink bug in peach also. This insect does not have effective lure. We're working on that this season. Next season, we'll be doing some preliminary work on looking at some of the pheromones and other things to see whether we can find anything that helps monitor this insect. So far, we don't have effective lure for this insect. So why is that, right? So we don't know the exact reason, but this is a work done in Japan. They looked at the winter temperature for a long period of time. I think they derived this from different research done in over time and summarize that. And when you on this figure, you can see on the x-axis, you can see mean January temperature. So as the temperature, overall average temperature in January drops, the increases, right, in the winter time. Um, and also the insect mortality also decrease. So that means the colder temperature in January is impacting their population because they overwinter just in the orchard. So they exposed to this cold temperature and their mortality will be significantly higher, even by 1 or 2 degrees increase in temperature in the January, in the winter time. Again, this is not the green stink bug. This is southern green stink bug, different species, but more or less all the stink bug kind of behave the same way. So if you looked at the night temperature in California in the last, several decades, at least if you focus on the last 2 decades, the number of the cold nights has been below average in the last couple of decades. So whether that would be, again, it's a 1 or 2 degree lower or higher make a lot difference for insect world, right? So for the insect. So that could be one of the factors. We don't know, but we are definitely seeing the increased stink bug pressure in tree fruits, tree nuts altogether. So another insect that is the invasive one is brown marmorated stink bug. It's an invasive pest, first detected in the East Coast. Now it's pretty much spread throughout the United States. It's a highly polyphagous, so they can feed on all different groups of the crop. So this is a current distribution. Of course, the red one is very heavy pressure population in those state, and the orange one is kind of a little bit lower tier than that. We're in that category, but it's still when you have the pest and pressure, then they can do a pretty substantial crop damage. As I said, the white host range, not only the crop, but also the lot of ornamental trees where it has a fruit or the seed pod, they preferred a lot of these in there. So majority of the cases when brown marmoset stink bug establish in urban area because of that, and then it slowly move to the ag, and that's been seen in a lot of all the states, including California. They also feed on vegetable crops, as you see in these pictures. So they can attack the corn, pepper and okra and tomato and all of that if the population is enough there. So this is a basically distribution. The yellow one is established BMSP population, and you can see the established population in these counties. Santa Clara is one of them, and I know that it's been there for I would say last 10 years or so. And it might have spread up and down. So I don't know whether we necessarily look at this insect and doing the monitoring. That's another thing sometime to find out because there are complex of the stink bug out there. And even though invasive species is one of the aggressive one and causing most damage, but we generally refer the whole thing as a stink bug damage, right? And so that could be the one of the factor. But certainly in the northern San Joaquin Valley, where it is a pretty significant pest for almonds and as well as peach. What kind of damage they do? More or less, all the stink bug do the similar damage, but it's the number of the stink bug and their feeding behavior, aggressiveness make a difference. BMSB is definitely one of them that intensely feed on the fruit and cause a lot significant damage. Some of the pictures that I've taken a couple of years ago in our county, on the left, you can see peach fruit. It's infested by the BMSP that orchard and see the damage external as well as internal. There are some in nectarine also the same way. In the middle, apple, they can definitely attack an apple and feed on it. It's a big issue in the East Coast, other places. Somehow I have the extra photos appear here. Anyway, so almonds also the same way. Pistachio they can feed on. Whether the BMSB has been established well down in South in Central Valley because of the super high temperature dry condition, it seems to be their population is not doing that well in down south, but especially in northern part of San Joaquin Valley and in the coastal area and the Sacramento Valley. I think they are doing better in establishing and doing damage. Some of the pictures from Pear, it's in Sacramento County. One of our previous colleague took these pictures. I also looked at some of the damage and in the peaches, and of course different type of damage, categorize it in a different variety of the. Let me see if I can pull up the. Uh, Okay, sorry. This one I'm looking for. Yeah, some cases you can see pretty significant deformation. Again, I think the BMSB damage is really, it depends on the population out there, what other factors out there. Because they overwinter somewhere else outside of the orchard in people's homes and wood piles and other things, kind of more protected, warmer areas. And as soon as spring hit, they move to the orchard. And they also tend to go from one orchard to another orchard, one fruit to another fruit type. Because of that, their overall movement, what's out there for the overwintering, it matters a lot in terms of how much damage you get in there. So if you have a small block, it's surrounded by all the wood, all the homes and stuff, then you likely have more damage by this insect. as I said, the outside orchard matters. So this is one of the tree. They're one of the preferred host, non-crop host, tree of heaven, and you can see that a lot of fruit they can feed on and establish in there and move to the orchard. This is overall season of phenology, especially on the peach. If you think about the overall population from the spring to all the way to, I would say the October population might not matter too much, but this is an overwintering population. But mostly in the in-season population, that's what they can feed on any stage of the peach fruit, right? Um, and it's the same way we're seeing in almonds, also in the valley. We do have monitoring traps for brown marmoset stink bug. If you suspect some, I know that the Gilroy area there has been some detection of BMSP in the past, and you can bring these traps and or contact on one of your contact advisor there, and then ask if you wanted to use this and to see whether the BMSP present in there or not. So these are the traps and lure, very effective for detection. They are available to use. Plus, also overall for all the stink bug, other way of doing the sampling is basically looking at doing the visual sampling, beating tray sampling. Those are very effective ways to find out what species is present, what kind of damage is there if you look at the gummy fruits and things of that kind. In terms of the insecticide control management options, so we do it's so whole all the stink bug species, it's important to understand their biology when the adults become active and coming into the orchard. The second thing is that you try to control the adult before it causing the much damage. So in that case, and then also killing the adults is very difficult. So in that case, mostly in terms of chemical insecticide in commercial situation, mostly these broad spectrum pyrethroids are important for control. At the same time, when you apply these, it also broad spectrum, so it can also kill some of the beneficial insect, and then that can create another issue with the mites and other things. So we have seen it, but these are some of the insecticides that are available and do good job in controlling stink bug if you find out on time. These are some of the other ones that I did some research. This is on almonds, the trial, very recent trial that we did with multiple different insecticide. I won't have time to go through detail, but I can make the slide available if you want later. So there are some insecticide, softer insecticide, for example, surround kill in here, soybean corn oil based insecticide. Some of them shows better results than the untreated control up here. On an average, it's difficult to control the stink bug, I would say, but I think if you can apply some of these insecticide, should probably help in reducing the population. I would say that anytime when you apply the insecticide, you need to follow the level, crop, what your target is. So all of that is very important because I'm just broadly covering stink bug management here. You can also look up UC IPM guidelines, and we also listed some of the organically approved options in there too. Mostly these are the neem-based products and some of the pyganic and pyrethrin-based product, um, mostly pyrethrin-based product. So for the organic situation if you're dealing with. Again, these are all available through the UC statewide IPM program and their guidelines. So you just need to find the source from there. We're also working on some biological control options. This is just still in the trial, so we're releasing this Trisulcus japonicus, which basically a parasitoid attacks the eggs of BMSP in multiple almond orchard where we see the BMSP present. We've been releasing it every year in more and more number. The idea is that if we can establish this population in the area, then that can help to reduce the population. So again, this is a work done in collaboration with the CDFA. They are the one that rearing this parasitoid, bringing this to us, and then we'll go and put them out there. And so those are some of the kind of long-term control strategy for this stink bug. So for the stink bug, in summary, I would say that they can feed on the fruit, directly on the fruit, so they're direct pest. Have a piercing, sucking mouth part. It create the different kinds of the signs on the fruit, like cat facing, dimpling, internal necrosis, and things. There are some of the tools available, monitoring tools, as well as the insecticidal tool. But again, use it if you definitely need it, if the your population warrants to use them. Okay, moving on to carding moth. I'm looking at my what's here. So for carding moth, I would say this is a prominent pest in apple, pear, and also then walnut. It's a basically the worldwide pest. There are multiple, uh, pretty much uh, found in throughout the world. This is a picture that I've taken a couple of weeks ago in Australia in all walnut. There is carding moth in the traps. Um, so they are, yeah, and so in terms of their biology, they overwinter. These are moth pests, but they overwinter as a larva on the tree barks. The adult start and then they turn into the pupa in there, and then in spring they start emerging. They lay eggs. After that, they start finding the places where they lay eggs. I mean, it could be in the leaves, it could be in the fruit. Mostly in a walnut, it's on the fruit. In apple and other system is mostly on the leaf. So they lay eggs there. They have multiple generations. So it's important to think about if you have the multiple generation that can attack in any time of the season, how you kind of time your approach of not only monitoring but applying anything that is needed, right? Um, and I already described that a little bit in there. So they're and in season, the when they lay eggs, the larva will come out, and that's the one that caused the damage. And so when the larva hatch, it goes into the fruit and cause the damage, and they come out from there for pupation somewhere in the bark or on the tree, and that's where you can see these all kinds of symptoms, damage symptom on this apple fruit. It's a picture from the Washington state, so they have a lot of these symptom in there. You can see that goes all the way to the middle, right? So the apple, and it's the same thing with the in walnuts too. Monitoring is very, very easy in a way that there has been established monitoring protocol and traps and lures available for carding moth. It is important to monitor carding moth for the same reason that I mentioned earlier. You can also calculate the degree day because that helps you to determine what is happening out there for different generations. When you have first generation, what is the degree days that is needed to treat those populations? So those kind of things you can learn a little bit more through the UC IPM guidelines. We have the model where you can use your county, you can select your CIMIS station for the weather, and it can give you the number, the degree days number. So that you can make a decision based on that. For example, in this case, I mean, we have three generations of this carding moth, as you see here. So what is important here is that to find out when their population activity begins, and then use the traps and those degree day model and figure out what is the timing. And then as goes that first generation goes down, and again you start putting the trap, you continue check the trap. When you start increasing the number, that would be your another flight, and then it goes on like that. So you just keep tracking these flights because your target is the egg and early stage of the larva. So you need to determine when the majority of the adults are flying, when they're actively laying eggs. That would be the time when you want to put any insecticide or any other kind of type of control you want to do it. There are many different options available too. Cultural practice, especially maybe it's possible to a small scale grower because they overwinter on the bark. So you want to put these cards, cardboard type of cards in there so that they can shelter on the cardboard instead of bark. So you can remove the cardboard and destroy them. Again, I mean, it's may or may not be possible in all situations, but if you have small scale one or few trees and out there, that is possible option. Fruit bagging is another options. So those are some of the options that you can use as a cultural practices. Mating disruption, if you have a orchard that is a significant acre, 10 acre, 20 acres, 50 acres, something like that. You can use the mating disruption options. There are all different kinds. There are sprayable mating disruption. There are dispenser of different types, passive dispenser, as well as the flowable, that as well as the aerosol dispenser you can apply in there. So how the mating disruption works, it's basically you're putting the pheromone out there that is mimic the female pheromone, and the male moth will be confused because of the so much pheromone out there. They will not be finding the female because they would not be able to detect the pure pheromone coming out from female because it's so much pheromone out there. So that's kind of like overall population reduction approach with the mating disruption. Insecticide option, again, your target is that early stage larva. So anything that can target those would be the options. There are some of the listed I have here. Again, I will refer again back to the UCIPM guidelines. Go and check in there. There are some of the organic options also out there available. But I think most critical thing is your coverage and your timing. If you're not tracking your flight, it doesn't matter what insecticide you use because the timing is the critically important to managing this in the orchard situation. So with that, yeah, carding moth is a pretty important pest, and it's a direct pest because it feed on directly on the fruit, right, which is the edible part. It's understanding these population different life cycle when they become active and what they're doing out there is very important. And the management options are there, so you can combine those tools together to make the best decision, which is the IPM is all about.